Torn Away describes itself as an interactive adventure about a girl torn away from home. 10-year-old Asya, along with her mother, is taken away for forced labour in Germany. Millions of Soviet people suffer the same fate, as Europe is engulfed in the flames of World War II. After enduring several excruciating months in a labour camp, Asya managed to make her escape. She traverses the entire expanse of Germany and Poland to reach her homeland, where she endeavours to reunite with her family. The game is a compelling story-driven experience. It contains depictions of the horrors of war that will stick with you, contrasted by the whimsical commentary from Asya's imaginary companions. The game looks like a watercolour. The aesthetic of the game looks like traditional animated film or a children's book. It features a variety of gameplay segments and perspectives. In action scenes, we are in a side-scroller perspective where we can walk, crouch and run, jumping over gaps, pushing and pulling obstacles and objects. Other scenes have us able to walk in all directions. These segments play out like adventure games. We usually get some sort of task to take care of in order to progress. We can inspect items and notes. The game helpfully has a key that highlights objects. This was a conscious choice to not have the players stuck on a puzzle in favour of experiencing the story unhindered. Lastly, we have moments of gameplay where we take on the first-person perspective. These moments are used for dramatic effect. We literally experience the events through the character's eyes. The shift in perspective can be at times jarring, but the uneasy feeling the sudden perspective change gives us works perfectly. The only criticism I have on the gameplay is that jumping across gaps can be fiddly and requires the player to be precise. But the game isn't punishing, it usually drops you back seconds before where you died. A soothing soundtrack starts to play when Asya is wandering through the cold wilderness of Germany. The sound design and soundtrack is stellar. Ambient tones guide us through the calmer moments, and a larger dramatic score plays during the tense moments. The game knows when and how to use score to emotionally heighten the scenes, without it feeling overly sentimental. I really hope the developers make the soundtrack available in some form. The sound effects are immersive, from the wind and the birds of the wilderness to the coughs and creaks of the work camp, to the racket of artillery and bombshells of the battlefield. The dialogue is mostly Russian, with a few German lines. I like the way they say Russian is the recommended language on the menu. I prefer to play games in the language it was intended, rather than listen to a ropey dub. I tried playing a few chapters in English for the purpose of this review.
Don't worry so much, I'm fine.
Sure you are. Then who was crying all last night?
Enough, madam. Today is a new day.
It mostly sounded fine, but I do prefer the Russian language. The mother character in English has an accent that I couldn't place. She sounded different to the American-tinged accents of the rest of the cast.
Give me your hand. How is he? Fully dry?
Yes, just fine.
That's good.
How are you feeling, Katya?
It's okay. I've been worse.
It seems strange that the mother would have a different accent to her daughter, but perhaps her accent is meant to be different, and I'm missing something here.
Well, now that they're clean, he can start repairing them.
We see a note in Asya's diary saying local children don't want to talk to her. She spends most of her time with her imaginary friends, Arkady and Madame.
У Катерины Семеновны все никак руки не доходят подлатать этого красавца. Как возьмется, так сразу реветь начинает.
Наверное, про папу вспоминает. Как он там мерзнет без рукавицы. Даже мне как-то грустно стало.
Arkady is a toy horse her father gifted to her. He is often kind and reassuring. The horse and later comrade Mitten seem to represent what she remembers of her father. The toy characters come across as charming. Asya is a loner, and we hear Madame says no one wants to play with her. Her mother, Katerina, sounds annoyed by her daughter's imagination. Being a teacher, she would prefer Asya to focus on her studies rather than imaginary friends. She is hurt by her mother's depression, and she seems to think that her mother no longer loves her. We get the sense that Katerina's mental health has deteriorated due to the war. Perhaps Madame represents her mother when she is in one of her bouts of depression.
Да, это ты хорошо подметила. Ты вечно ее расстраиваешь.
The game plays out like a road movie, and the characters we encounter with Asya leave an impression on us. These can be friendly or antagonistic characters that Asya faces, as well as diaries and things left behind by people who have become casualties of war. I like the game's use of a diary. Many games feature a diary in order to tell us the thoughts of characters or give us a greater view of the world they're set in. Often in games they can be a real bore to read and interrupt the flow of the game. Thankfully, in Torn Away, the diary never feels overbearing, and we are given a better sense of what Asya is going through as these dramatic events unfold. I would recommend Torn Away to anyone who enjoys a narrative-driven experience with a bit more substance. The game isn't too violent, and could be a good way of getting a younger generation to engage with history. The story is sad and beautiful. The sound design and visuals are excellent. You will reflect on it a long time after you've put the controller down. It may even make you think about the horrors being committed in the world right now. This could be a minor spoiler, but I will not go into much detail on the circumstance. We encounter a downed ally pirate named Igor. He is wounded and Asya helps him. When looking for medical supplies, she finds a half-burnt photo of the man's family. She tends to his wounds and hands him the recovered photograph. He says it's his wife and daughter, and goes on to explain that sometimes he closes his eyes and dreams of being reunited with them. The game puts us into the cockpit of the plane in the first-person perspective. We are in the perspective of Igor, returning home to the motherland. The music swells as he describes what he will do when he sees them again. The whole scene plays out with the now intact photo pinned to the dashboard, with his wife and daughter always watching over him. I found the sequence profoundly moving. He tells Asya this vision, knowing that the Germans are probably not far behind, and he will never be reunited with his family. I will leave you with this clip before moving on to spoilers.
Плыву я на своей птичке по небу, мотор ласково рычит, пропеллер отгоняет тучи. Подо мной вражеские руины, которые вижу в последний раз. Чем дальше я проплываю, тем теплее и радостнее у меня на душе. Вот-вот и родные просторы начинают проявляться за горизонтом. А там земля, там и дом родной. Где дом, там и родимая моя дочь и жена. Вот уже обнимаю их, носом в соломенные волосы зарываюсь. Они плачут от счастья, я целую их в соленые щеки, говорю им, как люблю, как ждал этого часа. Так бы и замер в этом моменте.
Later in the game, Asya is taken shelter from a storm in an abandoned shack. While searching for items to start a fire, she finds a cupboard that has been nailed shut. Upon prying it open, she sees documents she doesn't understand, presumably written in Hebrew, accompanied by a menorah. Earlier, Asya says there were foreign people in the work camp who wore different badges to her. Presumably Asya isn't aware of Jewish people and their culture. We find a diary of a woman who lived in the hut. It says that she and her husband are waiting out the troubles of war in the forest. She is pregnant and her husband goes into town to find a doctor. He managed to find an old acquaintance to deliver the baby. The family experiences a particularly cold winter, and the woman reports that her belly hurts and she is shivering. The husband has been away for days, and that's where the diary ends. Asya discovers a hidden basement where she looks for supplies. Walking back to the stairs, we find the bodies of the woman and her baby. The father must have been captured visiting the town, and the mother must have succumbed to her fever, leaving the baby to starve. The image is perhaps the most disturbing in the game, and it paints a bleak picture. Asya is shocked and upset upon finding the remains, and Comrade Mitten remarks,
Тише, тише, тише. Уложить ребенка — это счастье для мамы. Не будем их будить.
We are able to straighten the pictures of the family on the wall. This bit of interactivity is a nice gesture. One night in the work camp, Asya's mother, Katerina, is missing. Asya leaves her living quarters to search for her. We are placed into the first-person perspective again, and we have to navigate our way through the crowds of workers. The camera movement is limited. The character is locked facing forward. You can only head forward and strafe left and right through the crowd. This makes us feel claustrophobic, and we are unable to see past people with the camera locked at the height of a 10-year-old. As we progress forwards, an air raid siren begins to sound, and Asya spots her mother in the crowd. Katerina is killed during the airstrike.
Тебе пора, родная. Я знала, что ты меня найдешь.
Asya manages to find a German town as she looks for food and shelter. She comes across a Christmas fair, but she has no concept of what Christmas is. She is taken in by a kind German woman named Selma. However, word quickly gets out around town that she is harboring a Russian child.
Ася, проснись. Возьми ключи и запрись в комнате.
Nazis show up at her door, and Asya once again has to flee. She runs while pursued by Nazi soldiers until she hits a railway track. Asya often manages to survive due to acts of kindness by strangers she encounters. She would have either starved or frozen in the cold if it weren't for Selma's kindness. She runs into Ost, who hides Asya and tells the guards he hasn't seen anyone.
Девочка, ты?
Не знаю, тут только я.
He tells her that allies have broken through to Poland and helps her get on a train by smuggling her into a box. We get off the train and are in the tranquil countryside. Calming music plays as we approach a small village. We realize that this is just a dream, similar to Igor's, when we see Asya's mother and father greet her at a grandparent's cottage, and we already know her mother's dead. We are jolted back to reality and realize the train has stopped on the front lines of war-torn Poland. We have to navigate ourselves through the trenches, from the eyes of Asya once again. The trenches are a maze of barbed wire, corpses, and dead ends. There are a few puzzles and obstacles before Asya is confronted by a German soldier. He ends up on top of her, his eyes glazed and possibly in shock. We are not sure what his intentions are, but Asya reaches for his knife and stabs him. It may have been better to have the player to press a button to stab the soldier, to have us more complicit in the act. Asya is found by an ally medic, who takes her away from the battlefield. We see a white screen and hear the sound of what we presume is a hospital, and assume that Asya is now safe.
Всё хорошо.
We learn we are in a Soviet filtration point. The scene is lit up by a desk lamp, and we cannot see the Major's face, who is asking Asya questions. The questions quickly sound accusatory, and we worry that Asya may not be as safe as we thought. We are given the choice between two answers to give to the Major. It is difficult to choose an answer, knowing that each question further implicates Asya in the eyes of the Major, who believes she was aiding the enemy. Believing her to have been helping the Germans, he tells her that she will be working for the war effort, scrubbing floors, and will be sent to an orphanage once the war is over. By chance, a lieutenant recognizes her name and tells the Major that her father is a war hero. Unfortunately, we learn that he died in battle, and Asya is now orphaned. Upon hearing this, the Major allows her to find her relatives in the countryside. Asya now has shorter hair, and she looks older than she did at the start. She was forced to grow up, and now has seen many traumatic things. In her diary, she reflects on stabbing the German soldier. She shows remorse, saying that if he was to kill her, he could have done so straight away. In every other instance, the German soldiers have shot at her and others, so I don't think the character has lost any innocence by taking a life. An old man gives her a ride into the village, and he reflects on the war.
Непростое время было. Столько молодых душ загублено.
We walk the familiar path to the village. This time, there is no music. We only hear birds tweeting and flies buzzing. There is something ominous about this. We discover that the village has been destroyed, and Asya falls to the floor. We hear the laughter of children, and a boy tags her.
Ты водишь!
She helps an amputee boy break off a plank of wood, then gives it to another child who is building a fence. They sit around a fire and chat as more people join. Older, wiser, and forever changed by the war, Asya has found her new home, and they must all rebuild their lives together.